And thank you so much to everyone who is joining us for this evening. I am so glad that we are here with Dr. Groveman, who is such an awesome individual, and she has a wealth of knowledge on tonight's topic. So tonight we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the overall debate of media in psychology, or the use of social media in psychology. And, there, depending on who you talk to, there are different feelings. And so it's an open discussion about what those different feelings are and to talk to someone who's doing such wonderful work. So a little bit about Dr. Julie Groveman. She's a licensed clinical psychologist. She's a speaker and a with focus. Dr. Julie Groveman helps you break through toxic patterns, past traumas, and help you rediscover your inner strength. She specializes in treating anxiety, social fears, depression, body image, and generally just navigating life transitions. She also supports clients with loss, relationship concerns, and really helping clients to rebuild their self-esteem. She's helped hundreds of adults. She has helped them to conquer their fears and create healthier relationships in their lives and find more peace and be present in their current relationships. So she's been so committed to helping many people unlearn negative patterns that have limited their growth, and continuously doing this, not only in her practice, people in their life with her posts. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce us to Dr. Julie Groveman. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I'm so happy to be here with you. It's great to see you.
It's going to be such an awesome discussion. I'm so excited. So let's jump right in. I wanted to start with just checking in with you and have you share a little bit about how you got into social media and your services.
Sure. So it actually started when I was relocating. I lived in Manhattan and I was moving to Florida to relaunch my private practice. And I had a private practice and I had to start all over again. And just the idea of really having to start over, I was trying to be creative about what could help me to start a new practice in a new state. And so it was kind of a transition time where I didn't really know any other therapist that was on social media. It was kind of like a new arena for me. So it was a little bit anxiety provoking in the beginning. But I thought I also really had this goal of wanting to make people who wouldn't necessarily seek out therapy, to have them have this be more accessible, like learning about therapy in an easy way. Everyone's always attached to their phone. I know, like, a joke is whenever you're on the subway or walking down the street, people are looking at their phone. They're rarely like talking to each other, right? So, if people are going to be looking at their phone, why not be looking at uplifting, positive messages, right? So I wanted to make therapy more accessible, but also just to help me to relaunch a practice, which I don't know if it necessarily helped me get more clients when I was moving, but it helped me to focus on what I wanted to do with this next chapter.
I think that's such an amazing endpoint that it did help you focus. I know that tends to be a concern with social media. There's so much content and it often makes people feel unfocused. But it brought you some clarity on what you wanted to focus on. Sounds absolutely wonderful. And getting to that process, I'm just curious, did you feel that you were equipped when you first started, or just how did you begin and how did you learn?
Yeah, no, I don't think I was. Like I said, I didn't know any other therapist who was on Instagram at the time. And I felt like I wasn't even sure if this is something we can do. Is this like ethical? I had a lot of questions about what that might look like if a client found me on Instagram, or, I had some questions. I didn't have all the answers, but I did feel like the goal that I would tell anyone: when you want to start something, start before you're ready, even if you're nervous to do it. So I tried to just start, even though I didn't really know what I was doing in the beginning. So it's evolved over time. I think I've definitely narrowed my focus, and I've become clearer on what I'm actually doing on there. In the beginning, I was just kind of, you get into a rhythm after you do something for a little bit.
Right, right. I'm curious, what types of posts, well, before we think about that, I wanted just to get a sense of what ideas or share for someone who's new to Instagram or TikTok, Clubhouse, or any of the other social media sites that are pretty much hosting content. What would you share with someone who's new?
Yeah, so I'm only on Instagram. That's my area. And I would say, stick with what you feel comfortable with, what speaks to you, what's the easiest and most convenient for you, because there's so many different outlets now that if you try to do it all, I think you're going to feel overwhelmed. So I would say if you're just starting, start with one outlet, like if it's Instagram or TikTok, start with one. And then I think really being yourself and differentiating yourself in some way where you're not reinventing the wheel. Like, there are a lot of ideas constantly floating around on Instagram. We're constantly bombarded with people's ideas, and really trying to stay focused on your voice. That's why people connect with you. When you're drawn to someone on Instagram, most of the time you sense their energy. And I think as a therapist, you really get a feel for someone just based on, their video, their voice, not about them saying the perfect thing or having it all together. It's more like you're just being you. And I think as a therapist, sometimes we want to be the same person we are in real life as we are with our clients, as we are with our friends. And so I think finding your voice in that way and really trying to narrow who your target audience is, I know that helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that's really great information, like because you can feel bombarded with all of the different, um, but a particular platform that you think is best for therapists, or would you say just try it out, what feels comfortable?
Yeah, I think Instagram is very structured. Again, I don't know, and I know lots of people love TikTok, and it's kind of beating out Instagram now, I've heard. And Clubhouse is also another place for people to really give kind of more content. I think, like I said, I can only speak from Instagram because that's where I've seen a lot of growth. Like I've really seen, if you put in time into one outlet, if you're going to focus on Instagram or focus on TikTok, you will grow if you stay consistent and focused. So Instagram, I really enjoy because there are so many therapists that I follow who inspire me. And I think you have to be very intentional about who you're following, because there are so many distractions out there, and Instagram can be a great resource, and it can also be a place where you're comparing yourself and you're getting in your head. So if you are going to be on there, be intentional about who you're following as a therapist.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such a great, because a lot of times we forget we're human too, and we can fall prey to that comparison that many of our clients do, and just doing this, or why aren't I doing this too? So really, I think that's an important thing, to make sure you're very intentional about who you're following and what content you're choosing to take into your life. In thinking about that, I'm wondering, what posts do you feel help more people versus what gets more interaction?
So I'll speak from myself. When I'm on Instagram, when I hear someone share their story, something about them, that they tell a story in general. I think we as humans relate to stories, humans, like the human experience. And so it's kind of counterintuitive as a therapist. I know in our training, it's like, it's not about you. Don't share personal information, right? These are all things that I was super uncomfortable with in the beginning. I was like, I don't ever talk about myself with a patient. It's not about me. But at the same time, what I realized, I didn't realize in the beginning, but once I started my account, all these early career therapists were seeking me out to like learn from me. Like they were just going to grad school, or they were saying, should I go to grad school? And I started realizing, well, maybe if I share a little bit about my path, or my process, or my experiences with anxiety, maybe if I talk about that and show that like I'm a normal human being who happens to be a therapist who doesn't have all my shit together all the time, sometimes that actually speaks to people the most, like not being always like perfect. But at the same time, in school, we learn it's not about us, be a blank, it's about our patient. So I think for me, what speaks to me more is when people share a little bit, professionally have some boundaries too. You don't want to overshare, but I think we want to understand, like, who are you behind the account? Like, who is the person that we're talking to?
So with that, I imagine you get lots of comments on the regular. So how do you like manage comments? And like, of course, you're going to get trolls and, people who are just hating on the fact that you're doing really well. So how do you like and emotionally separate yourself from what might be coming out on your Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had so much negativity. I don't know if it's because I focus on humanizing. I really do. That's like my message that I'm trying to impart is like, I'm a human. I'm not perfect. We all have struggles. Like, I really do that a lot. So I haven't had so many haters, but I do see that on other people's accounts when they do really open up and be vulnerable. And it's very hard. I think that would be really, really distracting, and it could be really, it could make me not want to share. So I think I do get a lot of messages that sometimes are inappropriate, that are not meant for, not about what I should be talking about. So, block people. Or I know a lot of therapists who have a rule, they do not answer DMs. Part of my account, because my Instagram handle is Ask Dr. Julie, I have people asking me questions a lot, and I encourage it because I want to be my handle. I wanted to be really approachable. And that's something we could talk about too, how to pick a name for you that would make people want to reach out to you. But the downside of that is that people might reach out to me about things that I'm not giving advice, and this is not an account to give you. I have to be very clear that I'm not giving therapy over Instagram. And so I do an open question and answer sometimes where I get some inappropriate stuff. So I just have strict boundaries with that.
Well, I love that you are able to kind of speak to the fact that even during these question and answer sessions, you get content and that you have very, very clear boundaries. Deviate from kind of our line of questioning just a tad bit, but how did you strengthen your boundaries so that you can say, not something that I'm going to answer, or how you handle those situations? Did you feel like you were super equipped being a clinician that come with time and experience?
Yeah, well, I think as a therapist, we really do need to, we're human first and foremost. So we need to continually reassess our boundaries and to figure out what we're okay with and what we're not okay with, what we're going to tolerate, what we're not going to tolerate. In the beginning, I was answering everybody's questions, and I was just kind of allowing, I was giving too much information when I really didn't need to. So I had to catch myself with that. And then I realized as your account grows, you can't, this is a whole other job, is responding to people. And these are real human beings behind their phones. So you want to be sensitive, but at the same time, be very clear that this is not, I really am, I tried to help myself out by putting it in writing. It's on one of my stories that's stuck on my page, where it says that I am not, this is not a therapeutic relationship. Any information I give is psychoeducational. I am not sharing information. I'm not treating people through Instagram. And so, you have to do certain things to cover yourself. And also over time, you get less soft because you don't have time to deal with it. I mean, at some point you just have to, you're not going to engage with some people I do not answer because it's just not appropriate.
I really love that you said a very standard on your, and I would say any of our viewership should definitely take that if you are on social media, and put that, you're not providing psychotherapy, because I think that is a pitfall clinicians fall into. We see that there's a need and people are asking questions, but you cannot give advice or actually treat a person through social media. That just
Right.
but you mentioned that your stories were something that you really, really value, or hearing other stories. And I'm wondering if you can share a story with us about where you felt like you really helped or impacted the community.
So and I would say this is probably the reason my account is rewarding for me. It's why, I mean, there are parts of it that get frustrating at times or can be overwhelming, but the parts of it that are rewarding are so rewarding. And I mean, there have been certain opportunities that I would have never had if I didn't create this account. So I've had multiple student-led organizations, very diverse populations, contact me from all over the world and ask me to just speak to their teens, just to chat about psychology, especially during COVID. Kids have been just like college kids or high school kids have had like just a real lack of mentors and a lack of real human contact. And so it's so cool that these students are starting these organizations on their own and like just killing it, like doing amazing and just creating these organizations. So I had this two people, I've done a bunch of them now, but one in particular, I had this, she must have been, I don't know, I want to say 17. She created this program for students and she asked me, she was going to have a new doctor give a talk like every month. And so she chose me to do the first talk. This was a brand new program. And she said that students just were going to get some type of credit for not like community service, but that I'd be signing off on something just if they heard the live that I did on Instagram. It was probably like an hour-long live. And I was going to talk about anxiety and my path to become a psychologist. Just by answering their questions and listening to me, they were going to get credit with their school in some way. I could not believe there were 400 kids that came to this. I couldn't believe it. They all tuned in. This was the most people that have ever come to a live that I've ever done. And they were so engaged. And I really opened up. I shared my experience of having social anxiety when I was in high school and how it affected me and how I didn't let it stand in the way of my goals. And I was more vulnerable than I was planning to be, but they really were asking me all these questions. And afterwards, I was like, how did that go? I wasn't sure. And I got tons of messages from these students, like girls who were like telling me about trauma they've been through and that they didn't think they'd be able to be a therapist, but hearing that you can get through certain things and still help people, they thought, wow, like this is meant for me. Like I had a bunch of people message me saying, how can I get involved in psychology as a high school student? Where can I help? And I mean, there are so many kids who really are impressionable and need these influences. And so I think for me, for sure, I love teenagers, but being able to talk about how much I love psychology, they need that. They need positive things. And I think like a bunch of them now want to be therapists, which was cool, so that was probably the coolest thing. And that was when we were in the thick of COVID, when we were like lockdown time.
Well, I think that's, such a big story because you're hearing about not just the interest that there is in the youth about learning more and being engaged with psychology, but also that there is an opportunity for connection and that people were taking in the content that you were sharing. And I'm just, thinking about like this massive following and how people use the content and what you feel has been highlighted content that you think people have really connected to. Has it been the key phrases or the quotes that you've used, or you've taken a picture or you've captured a butterfly and talked about this experience in the moment? Like, what do you think has the biggest impact for the community that is part of your following?
I think people really connect to like a quote, you know, as simple as it is. Sometimes if you have 2 minutes to look at, like, I'll write out a huge long post with a pretty picture that I really thought was pretty, and no one gives, no one cares, you know, but it meant a lot to me and it took a long time to write it. And that's more for me, like more for the people who have the patience and the time to listen, they're going to listen. But I think when you're scrolling and you see a phrase, you know, I really do think sometimes we're so busy, we just need something to interrupt our thoughts. And quotes are powerful. And I got the most of the ones that get the most likes are when I put up a phrase that I'm not coming up with it. I mean, some of them are from me in my own words, or I've kind of have my own take on someone else's quote, but a lot of them are someone else's words that I really put my own spin on it. And so you're not reinventing the wheel. Sometimes there's this pressure with, oh, I need to come up with something so different and creative and, like, you know, do this new thing. And that's going to really stall you because, you know, that's the perfectionism of it. Needs to be perfect. And then I'll put this out there. And, you know, like I said, you have to start before you're ready sometimes. And also, just doing it is better than not doing it. So if it's going to be imperfect, just do it. Just write something. And like I said, I do think the small, short quotes that people see it and they're like, yeah, I get it. And I can relate to that. And then they think about it that day. So those were the ones that have the most engagement, I think.
I love that you said it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that's so important because the short is helping you to have those connections. And I think it's just, again, so amazing that you were able to take this tool, this platform, and that have led to creating potential mentorship opportunities and like large numbers of youth. I mean, the whole thing about technology that has been so wonderful is creating accessibility. And this may have been an opportunity that those kids couldn't have had in other ways. So knowing that opportunities to touch the lives of so many people, like how have you kind of used this to continue to support the lives of other people? Are there workshops or groups or things that you've done that have supported, you know, the same experiences that you've created?
Yeah, so I would love, you know, I've had a few different things, similar, smaller groups. I had women from different parts of the world contact me to do like a webinar. And again, like in the theme of psychology, they want to understand psychology, which I also think is so cool that it's like, that's what they want to talk about. And that's an easy thing for us to talk about, right? Because that's what we do. And so to kind of put it into a language where younger people can understand it is a different skill. Something I'm really working on is how to really make it basic, because it can sound a little bit overwhelming to a younger mind, like what we're doing and what it looks like. And you want to make it appealing so that it does motivate people to want to do these things. So, you know, I've had different people contact me to host more workshops. That's what I've been getting more now, more so. Like, I helped develop a program for women with PCOS, like, which was, you know, I helped develop a curriculum and different workshops for a specific group that people found me on Instagram. I think that's the coolest thing, is that, you know, you get opportunities that you normally wouldn't get because you have exposure. And I would say that one of the best things you can do if you, as a therapist, psychologist, is put your, there's a part on your page where you can say what your category is. And if you put health and medical, if you use that category, that's how I believe a lot of people have found me. Because if they're searching for a doctor or someone to give a talk or to do something, they're going to look under that category, and it just makes you easier to be found. And so, you know, I'm trying to think of how have these people found me, of all people? And a lot of times, you know, they're doing searches on certain hashtags, and we can talk about that a little bit, of what can help people discover you a little bit more. And I do think the health medical tag that I recently added, I do think it's really helped to bring opportunities.
I think, and I know that you're doing a workshop for women you want to talk a little bit about that? What, the birth of it and what it's been like for you in the past and presently?
Sure. So basically, during COVID also as a therapist, my practice has really gotten busy at home. Working from home for me, that didn't really slow things down. It really sped things up. And so I was thinking of how can I see more people where I'm not just doing back-to-back sessions because it's draining and I can only do so much of that. I love my one-on-one work, but there's something really energizing about working with groups of people and helping women. That's kind of my area that I'm zooming into now is women empowerment. And I specialize in anxiety, but it's really a lot of building self-love, building self-trust. And, for a lot of successful women, this is something that, we need refreshers. It's not like you learn it and it just is there. You have to keep working on these skills. So I hosted a few webinars during lockdown time, and I had a lot of people very interested. And then I just started thinking, they went really well. I did one on Valentine's Day for building self-love and self-compassion, and I had a lot of women and a lot of therapists, actually. It was really interesting. I had a lot of therapists who wanted to learn about self-compassion. And so it was really, I felt like I should do one just for therapists about self-compassion because it's so important for us to, right?
It's so you're told to self-love, self-care, all of those things, but you have to be compassionate first. And I think that a lot of us forget how to be compassionate to ourselves. We give so much of our clients. So yes, definitely sign me up.
Exactly. So yes, that might be something I want to do in the future just for therapists. But I basically decided to create a membership where I am going to be leading workshops every month, 2 a month, on topics really relating to building confidence and self-love and self-compassion. And so I have a component of social support, like women will have a private Facebook group that they can communicate in, and then they'll have resources, and then they'll have a little bit of access to me. It is not therapy. I have to be very clear too. And I think as a therapist, we have to really try to understand, like when we're doing these workshops, this is not therapy. And so that's also a new skill, is like really focusing on teaching. And that's an area that I think is really fun and a good balance to my clinical work. So I just launched, it's called an Inner Strength Women's Membership, and it's open to women of all ages, all backgrounds. And I'm just starting it this weekend. Actually, the first workshop is Sunday. It's on mindfulness.
Lovely. And I believe we'll have that information available to everyone in the chat. And, definitely check it. I love, again, that you're being very, very clear about this is not psychotherapy. This workshop is aimed at psychoeducation. And so I think a big question that a lot of people probably are curious about is, where do the lines exist between therapy and posts, and what are the ethical considerations? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, you want to be mindful that there could be your patients following you, right? And, I don't really look for patients on Instagram. That's not my, if people are connecting to my content and want to reach out to me, that's their choice, but that's not really why I'm on there. I've really found a lot of professional opportunities. So that's what I'm focused on, is like being on podcasts or, getting signed up to do different workshops, or, lots of things can come from Instagram, not just meeting potential clients. So really being comfortable with whatever you put out there is out there, right? Like it's in the world now. So don't put anything out there unless you're okay with it being seen by someone who you potentially are working with. And then also don't be afraid to just be firm that when you get something inappropriate, or if you feel like your boundaries are being crossed in some way, don't doubt it. Just like, you might want to consult with someone. You might want to talk to someone in your network about it. I think this is a really gray area for therapists right now because we're trying to navigate this. It's not like we have a handbook on what's okay, what's not okay. I think because of social distancing, this is going to be so much more important going forward, is getting comfortable with technology and getting comfortable with these kind of, years ago in grad school, I'm sure they would have said this is not ethical, right? But things have changed now. This is like how we're going to help people. So we have to adjust to the times.
I mean, I don't know anyone else, but I think it's BetterHelp, one of those sites. I have seen them kind of have these commercials where they have a therapist talking about like their services and come to therapy. And I think I nearly lost my mind. It's like, oh my God, there's a commercial. And it's not completely unethical because it's not, written in terms of like it being on television, but people are using social media in this way. And it is really important for us to think about how we are adapting with the times. And there's been questions about what our ethics to actually incorporate being able to do this. So I totally agree. We do have to adjust with the times, and if you're unsure, consult.
Exactly.
I'm also kind of curious and just thinking about kind of, doing the social media or creating, having your clients follow you. Do you have provisions in your consent forms that say like, follow me, you follow me, I may follow you, I'm not going to follow you? How do you deal with those types of situations?
That's a great question. I haven't added or updated anything, but I don't follow anyone who is a patient. That I would absolutely not do. And I probably, I have some who comment on some of my posts, and to not respond to them wouldn't be right for me, like just like I would acknowledge anyone's comment on my page. And that's huge of building your engagement, is you want to respond to people. It's like you're thanking them for contributing or talking to you on this platform. It really is a method of communication. So when my patients do write on my posts, I do respond and acknowledge just very basic what I would do to anyone. But that's it. And that's my personal choice. And I think that's everybody, has to come to what they're comfortable with. And then in session, if I have a patient, sometimes I'll have patients bring up things that I've posted that spoke to them. And it's a little awkward, it is a little awkward, but this is, again, if I'm putting myself out there this way, this is what I have to be prepared for. But, most of the time they can relate to something. And so they might bring it up because they thought about it. And I think, wow, we didn't talk about that. So you must have seen that in, like, it wasn't something I said to you in session. So you must have seen that on Instagram. And that's the cool thing too, is that with Instagram, your reach is far, right? Like you're not, you don't see your patient every day. So they might see your thoughts that you're posting and it reminds them of things you're working on together, and you're able to help more people that way. So there are a lot of advantages to that.
I think that's really, the reach is broad, and I trigger folks to think about things that they've been discussing in therapy. And it kind of brings, I hate to say it, therapy in their pocket, but like it reiterates a lot of content that they've been discussing with you in the session and kind of keeps it top of mind. Not that anyone should be processing 24/7, but our clients do go out into the world and sometimes forget about the things that we've talked about. Yeah. So having little reminders without having to poke and prod, I think. I'm wondering if you feel like it ever gets tricky in chats where people are asking for advice, or can you tell me what you do in my situation? Does it ever feel like you have to toe that line where you feel pulled?
Yeah, well, because I offer, like I said, the handle is Ask Dr. Julie. So it's inviting people to ask me questions. And so I have kind of created that for myself. So it is a little harder, but I have something I do sometimes is like ask me anything, and I will write that and I'll keep it in a story, because sometimes, you know, you might get someone who is thinking about going to therapy and they're on the fence, and they're, you know, this is an opportunity to give them some information on something they're maybe ashamed of or they don't want to talk about. And so and then I do respond with some type of psychoeducational piece about it. I'm not going to tell them what to do. But I do that I used to do it once a week. I don't do it that much because it takes a lot of time and thought. You know, if you're going to respond in a little paragraph to someone's big question, it has to be something very thoughtful, right? Because people can take your words and twist it and do whatever, and they really take it to heart. So, you know, I mean, I've had people ask me all kinds of things, and I do respond. And if I feel like it's out of my, you know, scope, I'm going to say that. And I usually end most of my recommendations with, you know, have you thought about talking to a counselor or a therapist? Have you thought about couples therapy? I give that plug because sometimes it really does just take you recommending that, and people do follow through sometimes. So I don't want to ignore, you know, questions sometimes.
Well, I imagine just being on this platform, you're getting a lot of people who've experienced quite of they and so there's not a real clear understanding of like what it is I do. Do I lay down on a couch? Do I bare my soul? And like, so there's these really antiquated thoughts about what therapy is and whether or not, you know, someone's just going to tell them. I'm certain you probably hear this a lot, but like the confusion between psychiatrists and psychology, like I don't want to go to someone who's going to just write me a prescription. It's like, well, I don't know that. At least not in California. We don't have prescriptive rights.
Right.
So in terms of that psychoeducation, it's great that you are sharing with them. Like this is probably something you should seek therapy plug to learn more, and putting our field out there in a positive light.
Yeah, I try to, but like you said, you have to toe the line of what is out of bounds, like what is something you're not equipped to talk about, and also you're not giving it direct advice, and you're not their therapist. So I make that very clear. So that's important. But I do think there's no harm in giving information. Like if someone's asking you a question and if you do feel like you have an answer that you could give them, you know, that's also part of it's almost like charity in some way, where this is someone who you're not going to work with. They're not your patient, but you're giving them something that maybe could help them in that moment. So sometimes we kind of have to, it's what you're comfortable with, but extend yourself in that way.
Yeah. It's super important, like reiterating the importance of this isn't a therapy relationship. You are providing psychoeducation. Seek this individual or this group or this you know place of support if you feel more. Is a person by the name of Keely Combs in California, I believe she's still in California, who has extensive work on social, not just social media, it was like media at the time. Facebook. And talk and make sure that like, you know, you stay within the ethical guidelines. So that I think is a really good resource for clinicians who are interested in, if you don't have forms or if you're just completely unsure, like take a look at her site. That's been her thing too. But she's not so much, I don't think, posting or using media in that way, but I could be wrong. I'll have to listen to her in a while. So one other question that I have for you in terms of kind of getting the setup and the lay of the land with Instagram, accounts that you ever regretted having?
Accounts, you mean like other than the one that I have?
Yeah. You know, did you try to branch out into other things, or did you ever post something that you wish you hadn't?
Yeah, I had it. My account was a different name before Ask Dr. Julie. My name changed, and then I created this new one as like a new chapter, a new beginning. And actually, like, it felt really good to just change the name of the handle. have I, I've had a consistent theme with my page. So I've been pretty much like, throughout. I'm also like on the side a beauty counter consultant, which is a whole other thing I've been incorporating that into my page, which was a really sticky thing too. Here I am, a psychologist. I'm talking about skincare and like, how am I going to do that? So, that was also cool and also scary to say, I'm coming out to talk about this other part of my income, this other part of my interest that's so different than psychology. But, I was kind of apologizing for it at first with other psychologists who I was chatting with. I was like, hey, I'm going to be talking about this. They're like, you don't need to ask for permission to do this. This is your branching out. And for me, it was like a really fun, and it still is, like, I'm not as active with it, but it's still like a fun hobby that is extra income. And I believe in the mission. I believe it really falls in line with women empowerment and knowing what you're putting on your skin, but it's totally different than psychology. So I was a little nervous. And for a while I was a little bit more into it, and I'm not as much now. So I was posting a lot about skincare. And, the cool thing about Instagram is you can decide tomorrow that you want to focus on a new thing. Like, you don't need to create a new account. You can just veer, like, whatever came before is before. It's just like the past. Like, don't look back, start now. And if you're not crazy about it, you can change it tomorrow and try to focus on something different. So if you look back through my posts, you'll see a lot of skincare stuff. And I don't really talk about that now. So it's just, it seems kind of funny because, but anyway, health, skincare, it's not so far off.
To the fact that, like, there's so much content, like, you can have this history that no one really knows about. They're like stalking your Instagram account.
Right.
Content does turn over really quickly, and you can start and just pick up where you are and go with it and kind of create whatever your muse is, and can be the thing that you're doing.
Yeah. So I haven't had another account. So this has been my only one.
Wow. I mean, it's awesome to just be able to be focused on one thing, and we see how successful it's been for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's another job. It feels sometimes my one tip would be for anyone who's just starting out and starting a new Instagram professionally, even if it feels annoying, to really be consistent with it, to try. It doesn't mean you need to do it every day. It doesn't mean it has to be every time, the certain time of day that you're posting or anything, but to just, it's one more thing, scheduling it in, that you're gonna make it a priority. And maybe it's a couple times a week, and just so that people are hearing from you, so that they start to associate you with this message that you're putting out there. And again, I would think, oh, am I being annoying? I'm posting again. I just posted. But it's like, this is part of you growing a brand and really putting yourself out there. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking to do it, but just it's going out of your comfort zone, and over time it will pay off. You will grow, like the account will grow over time.
And it sounds like be patient.
Yes, exactly. Be patient.
So you gave us a couple of breadcrumbs earlier about your handle, and like the proper handle. I wanted to come back to that for anyone who is curious about starting out. Like, how did you select your handle, and what advice would you give to anyone who is trying to figure out what they should call themselves in the social realm?
Yeah, so my sister happens to be really creative and good with marketing, and she helped me create. We were toying with a couple of things, and she said, "Ask Dr. Julie." I knew immediately. I was like, "That's really cool." I really liked it, and I liked that it was approachable, because I felt like before it was my name, and there's nothing wrong with having your name as your handle. I think that can be great too, but I wanted immediately people to be like, I could talk to her, or I could approach her, or it was kind of inviting. So for me, that worked. But I think for you, I was actually just talking to a therapist, a new therapist who is not on Instagram at all. She feels like totally Instagram inept, like doesn't know how to use it, doesn't know how to do anything. And I sat with her and tried to come up with the name. And so what I did was I said, just tell me like bullet points what you're about, what your brand is about, what your practice stands for. And I just wrote down like the key words, and you come up with something based on just really keywords so that people get a sense just from your handle of what you're about, you know. And it's not going to be, there's so many handles taken, so you can't always get exactly what you want. It might not look exactly like you thought, but be flexible. And if you pick something and you're not crazy about it, you can change it. You can change it at any time. And people do that all the time. They reinvent themselves, change their handle like after a certain time. So it's not set in stone.
I think it's kind of like maybe, I don't know, I'm thinking it's kind of like changing your furniture or your decor in your office. Like after a while, make some changes. Your followers will follow you. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. Now, about your thoughts on content and what to post, and where do you get your inspiration, and how do you decide what you want to share on your Instagram?
So I'm constantly inspired by the people I follow. So I would say it's so important to make sure that you're following accounts that you look up to, that are opening your eyes to things. It doesn't mean that, you know, you want to be careful about that. You don't want to be constantly comparing yourself, but you want to have some people who are really creative and who you look up to. And, you know, there are these huge accounts, I mean, there are tons of them, or not even huge accounts. It could just be people that speak to you, and you save their posts. The ones that get a lot of likes, that have a lot of engagement, a lot of comments, you save them, and then you go back to them at different times. So some of my inspiration really comes from looking at what worked for someone else. Like, why did that post get so many comments? And, you know, there are ones like the ones that I think are really great are like, what was the most impactful thing a therapist ever told you? And then people give, you know, I had tons of people respond opening up about lessons they learned from a therapist. But I think it all really worked because so like on the actual post I wrote, what's the most valuable piece of advice that you ever heard from a therapist? And then in the caption, I shared vulnerably the most impactful thing that a therapist told me, right? So I had to set the stage for people to open up to me, right? If I didn't do that and I just said, what's the most valuable thing? People are gonna be like, why would I open up to her if she's not gonna open up to us, right? So it's not like, we really need to build that trust. And what happens is you share, people share. And it's not like, don't overshare, right? Don't share something you wouldn't want them to know. But I shared something that a therapist told me that was helpful, and then people open up. So I think it's partly you being a little more vulnerable than you normally would be. Only whatever you're comfortable with, though, knowing that you're going to be uncomfortable, but something. And then also look at what works for other people, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe do something a little bit like them, but in your own words. And, you know, I save tons of posts from other people because I go back to those that work.
That's so helpful. I think that there's like a particular formula for what works, what people are looking for. You know, they want to post, you know, or going to post like 5 days a week, and then they don't get the interaction as quickly as they were expecting, or then they feel like my content's not good. Like, I think it's really important what you shared is like you're intentional about what you post, and you look at other content, and then you're also very patient, right? So it takes time to build your following, but you definitely will see the reward.
Yeah, and it's okay if you post something that you thought was awesome and people don't respond the way that you thought, because that happens. That happens to me a lot, where something that I thought was really like meaningful to me wasn't received that way. And just because you're not getting that response immediately and they aren't validating it doesn't mean that it didn't impact someone. So there are plenty of people, and I'll admit myself included, where I'll read a post and it really hit me and maybe it was a little too personal. I won't like it because I don't want to like it, but I thought about it and it meant something to me. But it doesn't mean that they, so really we want to not use that as the measure that it was a good post, like if people like it or not. Like, actually, I'm really trying to work on this, is like, it's not about all these people liking it. It's about, I'm speaking to the particular person that I'm trying to speak to. And as long as they get it, that's what matters for me.
Oh, that's such a wonderful kind of perspective to have, that you're not trying to, it feels a lot less pressured. You're speaking to that one person who gets it versus like, I'm just trying to get everybody, come on in. Which, I think that's kind of the marketing and the promotions that you see about using Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse. It's like, you'll get these people and it's a little misleading. But I think that what you're bringing to the table, how you're bringing it to the table is so really, it's not anxiety provoking. It's really relaxing and it sounds a lot more fun than it. You still have to put time, energy, and be consistent. It isn't dreadful work that you have to do.
No, and it's easier for me to, I'm a writer, but it's harder for me to sit and write. It's easier for me to just write something quick on my phone, like these posts. So, and they're not all quickly written, but I do think, everybody has their style, what works for them. And so taking the pressure off, that doesn't have to be perfect. I've posted things with typos and it's really hard to deal with that, but sometimes you just have to let it be there. And it's a hidden perfectionist in us that hates that stuff, but it's all a lesson, Well,
that's so. I lost my earpiece. I am married to a marketer, and so there's always these new, well, at the conferences, they're like, this is what you do to attract more people or convert more clients, blah, blah, blah. So I think this was last year or the year before. They two major changes, well, not major, but changes within the marketing. One was writing emails in the voice of like the salesperson versus it being like a grand, just a blanket email that's written for. They started analyzing it, putting names and things like that. And the second thing was ensuring that there were typos. Like, they were strategically putting typos in content because they felt that people felt it was more acceptable.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't me be okay with the typos, but these are tactics that are also being used in the marketing world. So yeah, feel free. So really quickly, as we wrap up, I am curious, is there anything else that you want to share with our viewership that you think would be great for them to know or to take away?
Just, don't be so hard on yourself, right? If you're starting something new, I know for me, we know how to do therapy. We've been to school for a long time. We're very skilled, all these things. And then you get onto Instagram and you're like, oh, this is this whole new world. And you're trying to figure it out, and just be patient with yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. It takes time, just like anything worth having is going to take time to develop. And so, just like growing a practice, anyone out there who's grown a practice, they're going to be quiet times and then things out of nowhere happen, and you just have to trust and keep the faith that it will happen. So just believe in yourself. I think that's the main thing.
Oh, such an amazing discussion. I truly appreciate everything that you've shared with us. And I am hoping group information is also there, because I think that would be thing for viewers to take a look at and learn more about. And if you are interested in definitely creating your social media presence, I hope you're able to use some of the tips that Dr. Julie has shared with us. And also, if you're not, definitely follow her at on Instagram. I think it's really important to look at those who have really, impactful accounts that are impactful to you, And so I would really think that take a look at her Twitter and not Twitter, Instagram handle and get a taste of it for yourself.
Great. Thank you so much. This was so fun. I hope you guys have a great night. And this was just a pleasure to share some of this stuff. I never get to talk about this, so it was really fun.
I will wrap us up for tonight by also saying you should be looking at TogetherWell's social media content, which is fantastic. If you're not a member of TogetherWell, you should totally consider joining. As you know, they are a nonprofit organization that is focused on bringing content to psychologists everywhere to help with education and connection. So they're such a great resource. Shortly after this, by the meditation, and definitely take some time to unwind if you're interested. And if you are looking to make connections and want to learn more about TogetherWell, definitely stick around for the networking. Connect with people, learn a little bit more about who's doing what. One thing that has been a consistent theme throughout all of our content has been connection, really making the connection with your peers and talking about things that you're curious about and consulting on things that you want to learn more. So we really hope you've enjoyed tonight's discussion, and we hope to see you back next month as we talk about suicide for Suicide Awareness Month. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next month. Take care. Bye-bye.